I think there's a spicy one that we should also talk about. We mentioned and it didn't get on our list.
Okay.
So Kim yesterday had a Jadon Sancho take.
Okay.
And she put in a number that I think caught a lot of eyes for what the likely fee could be for Sancho.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you describe the problem for people like around Jadon Sancho? Like we know what he kind of was before, but then Manchester United have this big problem. Like catch everybody up real quick who aren't fans of this, and then we could talk about the issues around selling this player and the issues generally that happen over and over again in the Premier League.
Okay, so obviously coming through, he looked like a pretty incredible all-round winger in Germany. Was a big problem for teams. Obviously, was the kind of creative conduit to Haaland, which was pretty profitable for both of them. Goes to Man United for an absolutely colossal fee, 72 mil, around there, big wages, and had a first season which I think was quietly a bit more promising than people noticed, but a whole portion of his game kind of disappeared. Like there was still some creative passing, there was still some ball carrying, but he didn't look like a guy. Certainly his shots went away, his goal threat went away, and also just watching him, it didn't look like he had the ability to kind of get separation from defenders and get his shots away in the Premier League the way he did in Germany. Then falls out with Ten Hag, there he plays. And now, who really knows what he is? Goes back to Dortmund. And yes, they have a run to the Champions League final. But that part of his game, that goal threat part of his game, is still not there. And it looks like maybe that's gone. So that's an interesting situation.
I think that if we change the context that we look at Sancho as an all-around sort of wide forward, and we look at him as more of a zone mover now, like you might be able to more accurately describe what you're thinking. So a lot of the zone mover guys are getting the ball further up the pitch. Then they need to move it from the middle third to the final third and push forward. The thing that Sancho always did was he had great creative passing in the box, right? He was able to create great goals for his teammates. That thing still has value, but you've got to actually have legs when you're getting to the box. And if you're the one that's moving the ball, 30, 40 yards forward, you don't necessarily have that. It's harder to do that, especially if you're not on the full attack. So the problem that we have now is you have this young player. He's still pretty young. He's coming into his prime now. We don't fully know how good he is at the elite level. We know he's still good. But you also know that he's got like maybe 300, 400,000 a week in wages.
Yeah.
There's no way that Manchester United are recouping anywhere near their fee. He's got 2 years left on his deal. They're looking at it and saying, all right, what sort of fee can we get back? Kim came out saying that they might get 30 million for him. I think that number is still way high. I think that number is going to be closer to 2 loans, and Manchester United are picking up part of his paycheck. And then his next paycheck's going to be like 200,000 a week, maybe 150,000 a week, like basically average for any biggish team. I think that's the problem here. So I think my guess is like a real transfer doesn't actually happen, even if United want it. If it does happen, it's going to be 20 million or less. And the problem is really the player wages that nobody else in Europe can pick up. Like they pick up half of it at the best. So that's the context around Sanchez. And I know that's a little spicy, right? Like Jadon Sancho, 72 million fee, unsellable, makes too much wages. Manchester United probably going to eat it at 20 million. And it's not because he's a bad player. It's just because the economics of the deal do not make sense. And when the economics don't make sense, you can't get anybody else involved. You end up with weird complexity, and you just have to bite your losses so many times. There are going to be more and more of those over the next 3 years until the teams get much smarter about how they structure deals, how they structure wages, and the fees that they're paying.
Yeah, because Kim's 30 mil was based on, that's what United are going to want, given that that's the kind of unamortized value remaining from the transfer, right? That's like the bit that they've got left to pay off. But I think once you arrive at the mindset that you're making a loss and you've just got to minimize your loss, then I think things kind of get better for you, or at least more straightforward. And often that's easier, I think, when a new owner comes in, a new manager comes in, you can just kind of say, previous regime problem.
I think United are in a spot where they're most able to clean house because they cleaned house behind the scenes on the football scene side, right? Like we've seen that. They cut a ton of people, partly because they were overstocked there. And now it's a question of how do we clean house on the squad? And it's going to take them 2 or 3 years to get to the point that they have a mostly clean squad, that they're smart. Are they going to get players out of the academy? They're not going to have any problem recruiting coaches. I think the good coaches, especially when they're run reasonably well, will happily go there. But they have to take medicine for another 2 years before they end up being in a spot where they feel like they're smart, and it's easy to move guys and it's easy to bring guys in now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the thing about Sancho as well is what you've described there. Him having this kind of zone moving role, you can see how that'd be valuable to teams. But I guess the concern is that he doesn't give you any defensive intensity, which you kind of also want from that guy now, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. On the flip side, he was pretty good in the Champions League, and that's the best display in the world, the best sort of shop window. So maybe somebody jumps in, they're happy to take extra risk. I just think the wages are so big that you're going to get a weird fee/wage structure, and the player's never getting up those wages, and he shouldn't.
No,
like the players end up with injury riddled careers, and they take the risk. So take the money too.